This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
All right, welcome back to Couch Potatoes. This is episode number 87, and a couple weeks ago we debuted this idea that we were going to have bi-weekly news shows and then bi-weekly shows with our other guests. So we didn't really know what to call it, but I just kind of on the fly threw out Hot Potato Headlines, and it kind of stuck, so I guess that's what we're going to run with. So this is Hot Potato Headlines Episode 2.
Hot potato, hot potato. Hot potato, hot potato. Never mind. Too much Wiggles, man.
I'm going to have you record that professionally, and then we will use that for the intro. It'll be great. So yeah, we have a bunch of headlines for you, stuff that's been going on in the games industry, but also a little bit of the movie industry, and, you know, just anything that can even remotely be related to gaming. We'll talk about that. But first, we'll jump into what we've been playing personally, talk about that for a bit before we jump into the headlines. So, Ari, what have you been playing this week?
I actually didn't play much Black Desert Online this week, which is
have you broken
weird.
the addiction?
No, I broke my internet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, technically, a truck down my street broke the internet by pulling out all the wires. So we didn't have, phone for, a week and internet for a week and a couple of days. I was going through the shakes, man. There was, bugs crawling on my skin. I was frothing at the mouth. Just be, tossing and turning in bed. It's internet, BDO horses, breeding, PvP. Oh! It was a dark, dark time. But I got through it, actually.
But you survived.
I survived, yes. It's kind of funny. After, a few days, I kind of didn't miss it anymore, though. So I started reading my books and that kind of stuff, and that was fine. Watching actual TV, you know what I mean? Instead of
that's
downloaded TV. It is weird. I was seeing these ads for the first time. I was like, oh, that's a cool ad. That's a cool ad. So the ads were actually interesting.
That ends up being one of the things that you miss when you don't watch regular TV. Because I've had people do that to me too, where they're like, "Oh, did you see that one commercial? It was so funny," and I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
Or it's just nice to have those longer movies that actually have breaks in them. I know you can just press pause on your screen, but you never do. So it's oh yeah, I'll just get my drink now. Oh yeah, I'll just get some chips now. That kind of thing. I don't know. It's weird.
Commercial break is the perfect time to leave.
Yep. But now that I have internet, it's I've stopped reading my books again. I've stopped watching TV. It's just, I don't know.
It's an addiction. No,
it's just a better form of entertainment.
Yeah, pretty much.
You would get over ads. And it's just nice to actually, exactly curate your experience, what shows you want to watch and movies you want to watch. So, I don't know, but it's kind of nice having the TV just throw out a movie. Sometimes it's I haven't seen this in ages, you know? You wouldn't usually think to watch that, and it's just there, so you do. Yeah,
that is kind of nice.
I did play a little bit of Black Desert Online, but nothing really major. I just did this big... We're in a new guild now, because the last guild kind of died, and they had this big PvP night, practicing together, 1v1, 2v2s, giant, Royal Rumble in the middle of the arena style PvP as well. It was kind of fun. PvP. I played some Adrift, which is that, walking simulator in space thing. Have you seen the movie Gravity?
No, I haven't seen that, but I know the movie you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just kind of like that. So that's the experience you get. Kind of simplistic, if that makes sense. It's just I don't know. The graphics are the best thing about that game.
Okay. Is it a VR? Was it made for VR or something?
Definitely. I think that was their main focus rather than actually making a game per se.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be kind of a thing for a while, I think, while VR kind of finds its footing.
There's elements there that if they'd actually built up, it could have been good. There's a story around who actually caused this accident, and if they caught it, if they made it into kind of that detective in space kind of gameplay, that would have been kind of cool. Uncovering mysteries and notes and piecing these things together. That would have been cool. But no, it was just walk between these areas and this area. Here's some story played out in the background. Yeah, kind of silly. I've nearly finished Hyperlight Drifter. I've gone through the southern area now and beat all those bosses, so it's on to the final boss now.
Cool.
That southern mode gets really hard. They really want you to know all the mechanics and just play them to perfection sometimes.
Yeah, I need to go back and play that. I only just fired it up and tried it. I didn't really play it.
No, but it's really good. I really enjoy it. Like, after playing it for like a couple of hours, you start getting into that combat system a lot more, and it gets a lot easier. Even those, like, now that I've played like quite a few hours, those southern bosses, if you were just thrown into them to start, it'd be like, you know, Dark Souls kind of hard.
Yeah.
But since you've had that time to get used to them, you really know how to tackle them quite quickly, so you're only dying like maybe once or twice to those bosses. Yeah, I really enjoy it. And that's it, I think. Yeah, that's it.
That's a really short week for you.
It is, actually.
Lack of internet.
Internet, yeah. And what have you been up to?
Well, I got two of the bigger releases that came out in the last week or so, Doom and Uncharted 4. I've played through, I'd say, half or maybe a little over half of Uncharted 4's story. Played a little bit of the multiplayer, but I think we're going to end up talking about both of these a little bit later, so I
really need to find a good person playing Uncharted to actually watch. Because I don't have a PlayStation 4, so I just want to watch someone play it. But like, I've gone into a couple of those streams and like YouTube things, Let's Plays, and it's either like these dude bros acting like fuckheads the entire time, or someone completely mute the entire time. Like, I kind of went a little bit of talking, but like interesting talking. Not just shit talking for the sake of shit talking.
I've taken a bunch of screenshots because they added this photo mode into it, where you can like press the two sticks in and the photo mode will pop open, and then you can like remove characters from the scene and just like kind of pan around and take a cool screenshot or whatever. So I've taken some of those, and I plan on making a post with just a screenshot dump. And then I've recorded a couple little small videos of little intense moments, and I put one on YouTube the other day. It's definitely got the same cinematic quality as the others, but there's a lot in the gameplay itself that I think is a little bit better than some of the older ones. It feels more, it's smoother and more defined, because like there were parts when you'd be climbing before and like you would push a direction and he would put his arm out so you could know that you were going to jump to that area, like it was safe to jump that way. But you had to like literally jump from every little thing. And this one, they kind of made it to where like his arm will actually swivel the whole 360 degree kind of deal. So like, depending on the angle of your stick, he moves his arm. And if there's something within reach, he'll automatically grab onto it rather than you having to jump. So they just made like every little bit a little bit more nuanced and defined. So like the gunplay and everything is a little bit smoother, and the rolling around and dodging and doing other things is smoother. So it's a really, really well put together game. And I don't know how Naughty Dog continuously does it, but they managed to push the envelope of what these consoles can do, given, you know, their limited architecture. It's ridiculous how pretty that game is. And it runs really smoothly as well.
They're making, like, they kind of polish each one of the series more and more, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
This is definitely the final one, isn't it?
This is supposed to be the end of this, and then I assume from there they'll probably come up with some other new franchise. There was rumors of Last of Us 2, though, so that might be coming next, which would be exciting because I really like the first one. And then Doom, I've played through, I think, the first 3 or 4 missions. I haven't gotten super far into it because there was a few other games in my backlog that I had already started that I wanted to complete. I wasn't going to buy Doom because after playing the multiplayer beta, it was like, it's just like old school Doom, you know, run and gun PvP, but kind of boring and seemed kind of limited. But they only, you know, of course, there was only a couple maps and stuff like that. But I wasn't that impressed, and I was thinking, you know, if this is the way the campaign's going to be, it's not going to be that great. And then there was the whole controversy with them not having the review copies out to places, so everybody was really skeptical that it was going to suck. And then I just saw nothing but great reviews everywhere for it, and I happened to catch a deal. I don't remember what the website was, but it was a European, and initially they declined my card, which irritated me, but then I had to go through like this fraud thing with my bank and say that that I actually tried to do that, and then it allowed me to actually make the purchase. So I got it for like 40 something dollars instead of 60. So it was like, yeah, I'll do it. And the single player is phenomenal. The way that they showed the videos back at like E3, it's much faster than that. The way the kills, like when you go in and do the melee kills, the way it works is very smooth. And like depending on the angle that you come at the enemy from, it does a different animation. It's really cool. A lot of fun. If you liked Doom back in the day, you'll love this game. It's great. Even if you don't even play the multiplayer, it's worth it for just the story or the campaign. And then otherwise, like I said, I had a couple games in my backlog that I was playing already. So I finished that Stories, the Path of Destiny's game finally. It was kind of that choose your own adventure game. I had found a bunch of different endings, but hadn't found the true ending. Finally did find that and called it a day.
True ending. That's dumb.
Well, it has like 30 endings or something. It's ridiculous. There's a book and it shows you all the endings that there are, and you have to find the 4 truths, which like each different path will have like one, like once you find one of the endings in one of the different paths, it opens up one of the truths. So then you know that bit when you go into the replay the next time. So once you found the 4 truths, then you can find the true like hero's ending or whatever. And yeah, it's just kind of a way to stretch the gameplay out, I think, which it worked for that particular title. And then I finally finished Banner Saga 2 yesterday. Took about the same amount of time as the first game, about 8 hours to play it all the way through. This one was less punishing. I think that the combat was a lot more nuanced and varied, a lot more fun. It was also cool because it was a direct continuation of the first game, so your guys were already leveled up a bit, so they weren't as weak, so you didn't seem to die as quickly.
It seemed like they had a lot of different types of enemies too, which is, I think, what the first one needed.
There was more enemies, but then there was also more types of classes you could have on your team, because initially it was just the Varl and the humans. Then they added in horsemen, but
Centaurs.
Well, they called them like horsemen or something in the game.
Yeah, centaurs.
Yeah, and then they added in. There was a couple different boss fights. The guy that you kill at the very end of the first one makes a guest appearance, and you end up having like your groups split up. Just like in the first one, so you have 2 different caravans going at the same time in different directions that carries on the storyline. But it had very much a cliffhanger ending, so it looks like there is going to be a third. And I hope that they wrap it up then, because I wouldn't want to see it turn into like an annual or semi-annual thing. Like, it does need to end eventually, but it's good. I liked it. I won't give out any spoilers, but I definitely think it was worth the money.
I just want to see how pretty it is.
It's beautiful. It looks just as good as the first one, but there was more. They did more animations, and you have the standard way where you're just walking down the line, kind of like Oregon Trail, and then there would be parts where it would zoom in and show like the godstones and stuff, and then there's the parts where there would be the camps, and then there's the cut scenes, for lack of a better term, where they would have you talk back and forth, and there would be slight animations. They added in spots too where there was actual 20 to 30 second animations of parts of the story that added more to it. So they did get it a little bit more cinematic in some ways, but definitely cool storyline still and fun gameplay. I enjoyed it.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's all I played this week.
All you played this week?
That's all.
That's everything. I can't believe you're getting all the new games. Usually that's me playing everything that's new. And
yeah.
I do want Doom though. Like, I was kind of thinking it was going to end up like, the revised Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
Just this pile of turd. But it seems like they actually got like the old school vibe right.
They did.
With the single player at least.
Yeah. And I think it's the same developer that did that remake of Wolfenstein a couple years ago. And a lot of people were saying that was... It kind of makes me want to check it out. I skipped that one because I figured...
yeah, I've heard that's really good too.
Yeah, I skipped it because I thought it was going to be, meh, like the Duke Nukem. And it ended up, I guess, was pretty good from what people are saying. So I might go check that one out. Maybe with a Steam summer sale coming, that'll be something to pick
Yeah,
up
I'm
on
like
the
that with
discount.
Doom. I'm not going to pay Aussie like $90 for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I paid like 47.
That's like 60. See, I would do that. That's like 60 in Australian, but they up our prices so much. It's stupid. And our prices in Steam and that are in US as well, and the higher than yours. So not only do we pay a higher US price, we then have to convert to AUD.
That's horrible.
Yep.
I feel bad for you.
Yep. First world problems, man. First world problems.
All right, so for this week, we have more fantastic headlines for you and us to discuss to you. It's going to be fantastic, stupendous, amazing, incredible. First up, we have several different stories that have come out recently about gaming that's invading Hollywood, which isn't necessarily a new thing. We've had plenty of video games turned into movies, but for the most part, they've always had a pretty negative reputation. I know most of the ones that I've seen have
You
been
mean
crap.
they've sucked?
Yeah, I mean, the Super Mario Brothers movie way back was horrible. Street Fighter was horrible. Mortal Kombat was
Yeah,
horrible.
but see, like Street Fighter and the Mortal Kombat movies, they're bad, but in a good way. If that makes sense, they're so bad
they were
it's
so
good.
bad. No,
They're
no.
so bad, but it's
Like-
good because they're that bad. I don't know. I like how bad they are. It's stupid but funny.
I mean, if you go into them thinking, okay, this is a B movie and I'm going to laugh at it, okay, great. But when you went into it as a kid thinking it was going to be as awesome as the games, it sucked. Doom sucked, though it had some cool parts. I hated the Resident Evils. Yeah, I can't think about the only one that I've
Those Resident
seen.
Evil movies were terrible.
Terrible. I mean, any zombie movie besides it has been better.
Agreed.
And I think the only one that I really enjoyed was like Silent Hill, and that's just because they managed to make it kind of cerebral, like, and weird, just like the games were. Didn't really feel like the game per se, but it was still a decent movie. But yeah, I mean, it's just been pretty terrible overall. So the newest one's coming out, or actually one that just hit theaters, is Angry Birds, which I don't understand how you can even turn that into a movie, considering, I mean, the whole plot of the game is just throwing your angry bird bodies at breakable buildings to kill pigs who stole your eggs. I mean, I guess that is a plot, sort of. But yeah, it's a 3D animated movie. It's probably, mostly aimed at kids, and I'm sure there'll be some adult humor in there, just like
It's
most of them
definitely
are.
aimed at kids. That's not an argument.
But I just, yeah. I have no real good opinion about that. I don't imagine it's going to be very good, but, it's a game that didn't really have a storyline, so what can you expect?
Well, it's the same with, Fruit Ninja, like you wrote down. I think, like, any sort of mobile game like this is just going to be a terrible idea to port to a movie. You just don't have the reference material there to actually make it something more. And not only that, it just doesn't actually suit that. Like you said with Angry Birds, how do you make birds fleeing themselves at pigs into an actual movie? And yeah, they did it, but it's probably not a good idea.
I mean, I guess if you just take this characters and that general small plot line and somehow, flesh out the characters and create some sort of moral dilemma and then, teach kids a lesson with it. Okay, great. You reeled them in because of the fact that they love Angry Birds, because it has become more of a phenomenon beyond just the mobile stuff. There's plushies and other toys, and, I'm surprised it didn't turn into a Saturday morning cartoon rather than a movie, but stupider things have happened. I remember watching Sonic and Mario cartoons, so I mean, those did have more of a storyline, but it still was pretty limited overall, and they managed to turn those into cartoon series. So I mean, I guess it's possible, but whatever. The Fruit Ninja, that's even more ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense because you're literally just slicing up fruit. I mean, how do you turn that into a storyline worth watching? And moreover, there's talks about a Tetris movie as well. Another game with absolutely no storyline. All it is fitting in block. I mean, if it was like about movers and like trying to pack up a U-Haul, because I mean everybody's made that joke that you just gotta Tetris that shit in there. That would make sense. But outside of that, I don't see a movie plot.
I think there's going to be a Centipede one as well. Remember that really old game?
Yeah, but like how? I don't understand. And why? Like, who's asking?
Centipede maybe, but it's just going to be like, that Anaconda movie.
Oh God.
Hey, that was good bad as well. So don't knock it.
I mean, the most exciting part of that was seeing what's her name in a white shirt that got wet. That was the most exciting part of that whole movie.
No way, it was the guy that got eaten and then vomited it back up and then eaten
Well, okay,
again.
we're talking about the difference between a teenage boy and a teenage girl. So, anyways.
Yeah, probably not what usual teenage girls. Vomiting snakes. Yeah, great.
Okay, yeah, you're good point taken, I guess. That only appealed to teenage boys in general. And then we brought up the last time we did one of these headline shows about the Warcraft movie, and that actually has enough lore and plot to pull from that I can see where that might end up being halfway decent, if nothing else, just for the special effects. But
I'm
I don't
telling
really
you right
care
now, it's
about
not
it.
going to be decent. It's because from all the promotional material I've seen, they just don't understand World of Warcraft. Like, it's not... I don't know how to explain it fully. Like, I feel like it would have been much better if Blizzard had actually done with their in-house animations an actual Warcraft movie.
Yeah, that definitely would have been better. But that would be better in the case of any video game movie if the actual company had something to do with it.
No, I know some companies are going to be better with their live action stuff, but yeah, Blizzard have shown just how well crafted they can make cinematics and story elements.
Yeah.
And not only that, but pump them out reasonably quickly, like with these Overwatch ones at the moment. So it is like they're probably the best ones to actually get it done out of everybody, I think. So it's weird that they didn't want to.
Yeah, what I'm getting at, though, is that I think it'll end up being a decent movie on its own merits if you detach it from Warcraft and Blizzard altogether. If you go into it just thinking, I
think it's going to be a terrible movie if you're not a WoW fan.
Maybe not. I won't go pay for it. I'll torrent that shit. But,
No, you will acquire it from other means.
Yes.
Shh, we don't torrent on this show.
No, never, ever.
Ever? What's this torrenting stuff you talk about? I
don't even know. I just heard it on the interwebs.
On the internets.
Yeah, it was a meme. So and then the other big player in the room, or one of the other big players in the room, Ubisoft, I don't know if they're involved or not, but of course their flagship series is also being made into the movie. Is that out yet? I don't know if it came out yet or not. I think it's coming soon. But Assassin's Creed is going to become a movie. Now that seems like a movie, that seems like a genre or a title that would lend itself well to a movie, though I'm not interested in it whatsoever because I don't like Assassin's Creed. Still, I can see where that could end up being a decent movie, just the same. Just like Uncharted could make it a good movie, or other similar types of titles. But,
Tomb Raider.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really
yeah, I know. I'm just saying it could be made into a good movie.
Right. It at least lends itself to reality fairly well.
Well, all of those kind of games, like Last of Us, that kind of thing, the game is actually built more like a movie as well, and how it progresses and how it opens up the story. With the plot points that come out and how
it's written well.
Well, it's written more like a movie, not so much like a game.
Right.
So it lends itself to cinema. But, yeah, I think some of these could be made into a good movie. I think Assassin's Creed, if they do it well, could be as well.
Yeah, it could be. But will it be is the question. But, yeah, I don't know. I think Hollywood's got... This may end up being like the next big thing. Comic book movies have been the last 10, 15 years, just one after the other, and now they're doing this with video games. I just don't understand why they're reaching for some of these other obscure titles just because of their popularity. It doesn't mean that they would make a good movie. Well,
that's exactly why. Like, you can see Fruit Ninja and Angry Birds, they're being done purely based on their sales figures. Right. I'm guessing we're going to have like a Clash of Clans.
Well, what I don't understand is, okay, I see these things happening and it doesn't make any sense, but okay, so Blizzard threw their IP out in the wind, and Ubisoft has done so. Okay, so what about like Call of Duty, the movie? I mean, I could totally see that happening. I mean, it's all it has to be is just a war movie. Any fucking war movie would do. You can slap
Yeah.
Call of Duty on it, and it's fine. That would make sense, and it's a hugely popular series, or Battlefield. Turn
I think
that
they
into
are trying to make a Call of Duty one, but anyway.
I mean, if they did, that would make sense from a financial standpoint because the game is successful, so the movie should be successful, and also the hoorah and the whatever military people or just people in general like military movies. So I mean, that seems like a shoe-in for a movie but then they are making Fruit Ninja instead. It doesn't make sense.
A recent game movie that actually looked kind of cool that I want to watch? Ratchet and Clank.
I didn't even hear about that.
Oh, you're terrible. It just kind of has this wacky atmosphere with its,
that one seems like one that would need to be like cartoon, like 3D.
Yeah, it is. It is a cartoon. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that working. Just like they could have done, a Crash Bandicoot movie, just the same, or anything like that. Because when it's cartoon, it's wacky. You could do anything with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the cartoon style suits it more because you can change around the scenarios a lot more. You're not bound just to what a person can do or just what your CGI can enhance. You really have a lot more liberty to actually change those events and set pieces and the characters.
One last thing I wanted to touch on. They released a trailer, although it's not much of a trailer. It's just a bunch of CGI space and then the Star Trek logo. But there is a new Star Trek series coming to TV. It's supposed to be on CBS. I'm kind of excited just because I liked a couple of the series way back in the day, but and it's been a long time since there's been something cool like that on TV, since we've had a Star Trek on TV. But the catch is, the article I was reading is that, okay, so CBS is putting it out, right? And I guess the first episode, the pilot, will be available on TV for anyone who has TV. But then
you have to get the streaming service.
Yeah, they're adding like some kind of all access package thing, and you have to have the streaming service to be able to watch the series.
These guys are retarded, though. Do they realize you can record what's on your screen? And I can guarantee you, a day after every episode, those episodes are going to be online straight away. Someone's going to have recorded their screen. It's going to be up and downloaded.
Yeah.
They're idiots for doing this. It's like, what's that company? Netflix. Like a Netflix thing. Here's all our shows,
That's what I think they're trying to do, is that they're making their own version of a streaming service, just like Amazon Video or Hulu or any of the other ones. They're trying to, instead of putting their stuff on Netflix, they're going to have their own, just like HBO does, like HBO Go, and it'll probably be fine because then it's just another option, another thing that you can get, and people can. It's kind of making a trend towards everybody having these streaming services rather than paying for cable. So we're either going to see,
but you can only maintain so many streaming services. I think, like, you're not going to be subscribing to 5, 10 freaking streaming services just for like a show on each of them. That's retarded. That's dumb. It's kind of like games right now. Like, you have a space for maybe a couple Steam alternatives, but they keep bringing out more and more, and to the point where you're just not going to go on them. You know what I mean? You've got enough already. I can't handle anymore.
Yeah, I mean, most people like Netflix and Hulu will cover pretty much everything that you want. But then there's like each one of those streaming shows has their own exclusive content to try and get you to buy their content. And it's something like, okay, so like PlayStation came up with the View, and it's the whole thing about it is that you can buy packages, only these certain channels or whatever, and pay less than you would pay for cable, so that you essentially can stop paying for cable and just pay for internet and get your TV through your PlayStation. The same sort of thing applies with any cable package as well. You get a certain amount of channels for this package, you get a little bit more for this package, whatever. People have realized a long time ago that having thousands of channels doesn't help you because you're not watching any of it except for like 5 or 10 channels. So the whole a la carte of Netflix or Hulu or whatever, where you can get the vast majority of what you want for way less money, is a great business model, and that's why those things have taken off, and that's why a lot of people have stopped watching TV altogether. So I could see why some major broadcasters like CBS would want to get their piece of that pie, and that's great for for people who want that. But it would be even better if we could just get either a la carte, like I call Time Warner Cable and say, I only want these 6 channels because they're the only channels I watch, and just pay me, pay like $20 a month for just those channels. I would totally do that. Most people would totally do that, but they don't make money if, they give those options. So I think that's why everybody's kind of turning to streaming, because a lot of, at least civilized world, has internet, and so they're doing it this way anyway. But yeah, interesting trend to watch. See if we're right. Maybe within the next few years we're going to see nothing but video game movies and streaming services. But with that, we're going to move away from movies and back to games and talk about some of the bigger releases that have come out recently. One major announcement came through within the last week or so, the next Battlefield game. They also announced the next Call of Duty game, which was a lot less exciting. It's Infinite Warfare. It's supposed to be the next after Advanced Warfare, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. Battlefield is doing something different, though. Instead of continuing with that future warfare that Call of Duty's been doing, and some other gaming series have done as well, Battlefield is going to take us back to World War I, which we haven't seen a World War II shooter in years. It's been a very long time since they've done something like that. They've moved away from that whole thing. So seeing the series go back to World War I is very interesting to me, at least, because I always kind of liked that era. World War II games as shooters have always been some of my favorite. I mean, of course, I've enjoyed some of the modern versions, but going back in time is always interesting. And it's a time frame that everybody's kind of avoided. Most shooters have started in World War II or newer, like more recent. So going back farther in time is even more interesting. But I'm not a huge fan of the Battlefield series, so I'm not sure if that's a game that I'll pick up. But being one of the forerunners,
it seemed a bit too hardcore for me.
I just never liked the fact
very
that
casual
the levels
shooter
were
person.
so big.
Yeah.
The whole die and run back to where you were just to die again was annoying. But, people enjoy it, and that's cool. But it's one of the bigger names in shooters. And if they are successful with doing this back in time kind of thing, we might see more of that out of some of the other big titles. And that would be cool to see a difference, something different, because, it's been getting kind of stale recently. As I talked about earlier, Uncharted 4 came out. So did Doom. And those are two of the larger franchises to make new releases this year. Doom is a reboot of sorts. Not really a reboot, but they rebooted the name. Most people are considering it Doom 4, and it kind of carries on some semblance of the storyline, but it's still essentially the same storyline. I think all of them have kind of been the same storyline. You're on Mars and something bad happens.
It has a story?
There is a little, but it's basically you're on Mars. They've been mining, and then there's somebody they're experimenting with teleportation technology, and then open up a rift to hell, and then that's where all the demons come through. But yeah, getting that really out of the store or out of the game when you're playing it, I don't know that anybody really knows what's going on. It's just like, holy hell, there's shit everywhere. I got to kill it, and that's about it. But it's been, from what I've experienced, it's been pretty true to the series. I saw this one interesting image that was floating around on social media that I ended up sharing as well, and it was like map design 1993, and it showed this really complex, convoluted map, and then it was like 2003 or 2010 or something, and it was just like a series of small, like a linear line that just has some bends, and at each bend it was like cutscene, and it's true, because that's how most shooters have been for the last 5-10 years, whatever. And then it showed 2016 with the new Doom, and it's back to those kind of maps. And it's true that that's kind of what the trend has been. It went from shooters having complex maps, mazes, you had to get keys, you had to do different things to open up new areas.
But not just retreading old ground, having like an intricate map that you have to keep threading through.
Right, and going back and forth, getting different ways to open up different parts. You come back and forth between different areas. Yeah, it's more interesting when it's like that, rather than walk from here to there, shoot some stuff, get a cutscene, then walk from here to there and do the same thing over again. I mean, I like the whole cinematic way that some games play. Uncharted 4 is a great example. There's a lot of cutscenes in that game. You play for a short amount of time and then you get a cutscene, and then you play for a little bit more, and it opens up more as the game progresses. Like a level that I was just playing, you get a Jeep and you're driving around a really large area, and it's not linear per se. There is a determined point where you need to go, but you can kind of explore in between, and you'll find different enemies and different treasures and other things. So, and then it goes back to being cinematic, and that's fine. I like that. For certain game styles, it works great. A Doom game with tons of cutscenes would be horrible, and everyone would say so. But it kind of brought some of the old school back with new technology, and I am totally for that. Moving on, there's been several other DLCs that have released as well. We talked about it a little bit last time, but Far Harbor for Fallout 4 has actually released, and supposedly it is the biggest landmass added in a DLC by Bethesda in any of their games. And I know that in Skyrim they had added a pretty large amount of content with one of their DLCs, so this one is supposed to surpass that. I have not played it yet. I have been working on clearing out some of the games in my backlog, so it's on hold for now, but I do look forward to jumping into that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to play it as well. Although I haven't actually finished a game of Fallout yet.
You didn't finish the original story?
I've gone through the entire map just about, unlocked like every area and all that kind of stuff, but I'm still like in the beginning area of that story. Like I've only just met the railroad people.
Oh, well, that's a little ways into it.
Really?
Well, depending on how you met them.
See, I might do that today. I'm going to play Fallout 4 today.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I want to play through this new DLC and just continue exploring the map too, because I kind of did a bit of exploring and then got stuck on some of those repeatable missions and did a bunch of them, and then finally said I'm going to finish the game, and I did, and then I haven't played it really since. I want to try out the survival mode, but I feel like I want to start a new character to do that. So I was thinking, and I haven't tried any mods either. So I was thinking I was going to just leave it vanilla, wait for these DLCs to come out, play through them, and then maybe start over and do survival mode, maybe use some of the mods, play around with it more. But that is still on my to-do list. XCOM 2 released another bit of DLC as well. The first little DLC that came out was Anarchy's Children or something like that. It was just basically a bunch of skins and things that you could use for your characters. And that ended up actually coming out before I really even gave the game much of a playthrough. So I started over and recreated all my characters with these new items. That's pretty cool. And then this new one is actually supposed to be, it's called Alien Hunters, and it's actually supposed to be basically bosses, but not just bosses where like you randomly go on a mission and there's a boss. No, it's actually supposed to be like a boss that you may be fighting and they can actually escape. And if they do escape, they can actually reoccur later on and you continuously fight them throughout. So it kind of gives you like mini bosses or something else to look forward to fight on your way towards, completing a playthrough. Sounds kind of cool. I haven't actually checked it out, but it's interesting that they're adding new stuff to the game at least. It seems like they're doing it in smaller chunks than they did with the first game too. Because I know the first game, it was just like the one big expansion and that was it.
Well, I think they've still got the what was that big mod in the first one? That huge one. Anyway, there's that team that made that huge mod for the first one. I think they're still working on something for this one as well.
I know I got the game when it first came out, or a little bit after it first came out, but then at some point I saw the DLC was like on sale, and so I got not the DLC, the season pass. So I got the season pass, so I already have these two, and I think there's supposed to be at least one more that's coming, but I'm not sure what exactly it's going to entail. And then in the rumor mill, there was a leaked poster that had to do with Destiny, and apparently people have run with it, as they usually do on the internet. And it's supposed to be called Rise of Iron. There isn't really much else information-wise, but we do know that there is another expansion coming. I really need to play more of that game. I got Taken King, and I've played up to like level 10 and haven't really done anything else with it. I would like to see it through, but it's one of those games that requires kind of a heavy amount of play to get there.
Yeah, I have it on the PS3 and I haven't played it at all.
Yeah, I imagine it's fun. I mean, I see a lot of people talk about it still. It seems like it's a fun game if you got friends to play with, but the whole reason I got it is because I do have friends that have it, but one of my friends has just the regular game and refuses to pay money to get the Taken King for some reason. And then my other couple friends that are playing it, they played up to wherever they got to and then got bored and stopped playing. So it's like every time I try to convince people to play, nobody wants to play. Such is the story of my life.
Yep. Every time someone talks about Destiny as well, I always think of the Division and how I haven't actually gotten to 30 yet. I need to play that too.
Everybody that I know that was playing the Division, like in my guild and stuff, have been complaining. I guess there's been a lot of bugs and a lot of issues, and people are talking about they hate it now, and they're not even playing it anymore. So I'm kind of glad I skipped that one.
Ubisoft game, remember?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I did skip it.
And they have a big DLC update coming up soon too. They're 1.2 with new flashpoints and areas to explore and gear to get.
Oh, that's always great when you can't play the game because it's buggy. That's pretty much all the big releases that have come out so far. There is one other that we need to talk about, though, that was just announced, and that's Civilization 6.
Insert screaming fangirl here.
Indeed.
Although actually not so screaming at the moment. I love the Civ series, but after Beyond Earth, I'm really quite tepid on this new
And,
game.
I never got Beyond Earth because
it was
everyone
abysmal.
who picked it up, everybody that picked it up said it was terrible. And I was like, well, I'm still going to buy it just to try it myself. And I never did.
My most disappointing game of 2015. Most disappointed at that game.
Yeah, that seems to be the case for most people. Everybody I ever talked to that played it said that they hated it. It was nothing like a Civ game. It was a Civ game, but it was really broken down and simple and not fun.
No, not at all. Civ games have those really interesting objectives, where you're going through the different ages where things change and mobs change and your attack approaches change and all that kind of stuff. It's really quite fun and keeps you going more and more into the game. One more turn. I want to get to this next stage. I want to make this next troop, that kind of stuff. Where this is just, it all blended together into this meaningless nothingness. The only really different thing you had for combat was that far end mob that you might be able to get in your path. But even the progression aspects and the technology was really quite boring to use. Just that web that you had to unlock, and just some of the mechanics were really quite obtuse, and just the map was really dull and boring, and the alien monsters there just were meaningless as well. The AI for the other, it's just, don't get me started.
So apparently it was really bad. Some other things that I heard were that it would have been better suited as just an expansion for Civ 5. And that's something that I kind of think would have been cool too, is that was always a win condition in Civ 5 was to build the space station. And it's well, why couldn't you just keep going and colonize other planets and shit? Can you imagine?
And this would have been a really cool DLC, giant expansion pack for Civ 5. Get to the end of it, you think, do you want to go further to the next alien planet? Yes, I would like that. And then it'd be kind of cool, but no.
Right.
It's dumb.
Yeah. So, big changes that they're talking about for Civ 6 is they're saying that everything that was introduced in Civ 5, like religion and some of the other things from Gods and Kings, and then Brave New World added in a bunch of other features. All of those features that were added in are supposed to be built into Civ 6 from day one. So we won't have to wait for expansions for it to be a more complete game. So if it is exactly like Civ 5 in that regard, right out the gate, I think it's going to be a better game than Beyond Earth. Beyond Earth was just a spin-off anyway.
Well, Beyond Earth was just felt like DLC without an actual game behind it.
Right.
And that's one of the things that actually has always irritated me about the Civ games, especially even Civ 5, is that the base game that they give you is more just a vehicle for the rest of the DLC. You can completely tell they've ripped out, say, the religion modes and all that kind of stuff already to be added later. So for them to say, yes, all this basic stuff we have done before is going to be in the game already, that's great. And that leaves them more free to actually experiment with other types of game modes for the next expansion.
Exactly. And also, looks like the graphics are similar, but maybe changed a little bit. I mean, they look similar.
I think they look a little more like pared down and cartoony.
Yeah, kind of. It's more stylized, I think, but it also looks like they left room for more detail at the same time, because that's one of the major features of the new game is that they've changed the way the city screen works. And one of the major things is like you always were building new buildings in your cities. And yes, your city would like grow in size over time as more citizens were born and more things were added. But like when you used to build a wonder, like build the pyramids or the Great Wall, it was always kind of wonky and just like kind of slapped on there and wherever, and it didn't really affect anything. In this one, it's actually each one of those buildings that you build in your city is actually going to take up a tile or part of a tile or whatever. So you're actually going to have to think about where you place them, and placing them differently is going to affect how they work. And then also making a city in just the middle of nowhere where it doesn't really make sense to make a city like we would do just to expand our empire. Now it actually takes into account the surroundings. So like if you build at a delta next to, where a river is opening up into either the ocean or a lake or something, if you build near there, there's going to be certain resources and other things that are going to affect what kind of buildings you can build and more like what you can specialize in. So it'll affect trade and other things that weren't really factors in the previous game. So that's supposed to be the big change. Otherwise, combat is supposed to be similar, other things like that.
No,
but they haven't gone into a lot
other
of
combat
details.
changes. You can actually stack a few units now.
Oh,
Not like combat units, but more like support units underneath combat units and stuff like that. That's what I read anyway.
Okay.
So that's
yeah, that
changing.
sounds good.
Yeah. Seems like they're really kind of just polishing what Civ is.
I mean, that's really what each iteration has been anyway. It's polish the old ideas, add a few new ideas, and, even if that's all they do to change this one, I'm sure it'll be great because, I mean, Civ's great in general. You can go back and play most of the old ones and still have a good time just the same. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. Other changes for just the base game, and then also, like you said, experimentation with further DLCs. Okay, so moving away from releases and rumors, some other gaming related stories that we've rounded up for you here. First one, I'll just start off with this. You probably have seen this if you've been on Steam recently. They added a new little section to each store page. Always, on the side next to the pictures or videos or whatever, it would always show the review scores, like a general, very positive, negative, whatever, mixed. And then you would have to, from there, actually go down to the reviews and, you could read through what people had said. Now they've added an extra section where it says recent reviews. And I guess why they were trying to do that is because some games will come out in early access, say, and get a bunch of negative reviews. And then at some point, the developers will have gotten past all those bugs and things that were pissing people off. And then the game becomes actually a decent game. But most people, when they come to the store page, they look and they see mostly negative and they go, nope, I'm not buying that. At least most sane people would.
And kind of the opposite as well, like early access games, they get a good initial review, but then abandon it.
Right, or they tank, or they change something and everyone hates the change, and now the game is reviewed poorly. So you can see kind of, generally speaking, since the game released, it's had mixed reviews. But within the last, I don't know exactly what the time frame is, but within the last, let's say, 6 months, it's had very positive reviews. So that would give you more of an idea that, yes, the game has had some problems, but at this point, it's a decent game. And I think that's a good thing overall. I think some people were kind of pissed because one of the articles I read about it said that some people that had gone and done those negative reviews and now the game is, they left for whatever reason because they said that this and this sucked and they put a negative review up and now the game's getting good reviews. They can just go back in there and remake another bad review and change it anyway. So it's not necessarily solving the problem per se, but it's a helpful tool, I think, for people to make a good judgment on whether or not.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps the storefront. I'm all for informed consumers.
Yes. Moving on from that, a major player, I guess you could say, at least a big company that owns lots of things, has decided to stop owning one thing, Disney has officially pulled out of game development. Apparently, their Disney Infinity series that seemed pretty popular. I know a lot of people talked about playing it. It has been canceled, and they just said that they're pulling out of games development altogether. Why that is,
I think it was something more like the profits weren't worth the effort kind of stuff for how much, actually manufacturing those toys, shipping them out, all that kind of stuff, based on how much profits they get from it. Like, it's not that it was unprofitable, just that it wasn't profitable enough.
Yeah, well, and considering they own they own Lucasfilm or whatever, and they own Marvel, they're making their money elsewhere, so they don't really need it anymore. I guess
it's also that they said there's still going to be games based on their IPs that they own, just that they're no longer going to be making it themselves.
Right.
So that they're going to just rent out their IPs when they need to get a game made. So yeah, that's actually what a lot of people do. A lot of companies do that. I'm just hoping it doesn't let a lot of its good IPs just die.
I mean, like what? What game have you played recently that was made by Disney? I don't think I've ever played one.
Not a game made by them, but the IPs they actually own, those Lucas Arts films.
Well, that I don't think is going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
That Star Wars isn't going anywhere. Marvel isn't going anywhere. So I imagine them licensing their IPs to other places. That's not going to stop. They're just not making any more actual Disney sanctioned or developed games. So that sucks for kids, I guess, but that doesn't really affect me personally, and that's okay. One big thing that happened recently with Riot, the makers of League of Legends, they are adding in a new feature that allows the players of a game to vote to, quote, remake a game. It's something that's happened like in the pro scene where I don't remember. It happened this season. I don't remember the specifics on who was playing, but somebody like tried to do something during a team fight, and it didn't happen. They got bugged, and they paused the game, which happens during live games. Sometimes they'll do a pause because somebody felt like something wasn't right, or their mouse stopped working or whatever, and then the IT guys come in, they fix it, and then everything goes back to normal. So in this one particular game, one of the players had done something, and they said that it didn't seem like what they did happened. They investigated, they found a bug. They said, yeah, it's a bug. We can't take that back or whatever because it had already happened. So the judges gave them the option to redo the game. So they just start over the game, play it through. So now that's supposed to be something that's coming to the regular client for everyone. Basically, when you first start the game, within the first 3 minutes, if you have somebody disconnect from the game, go AFK, which is very frustrating, especially when you're playing ranked games. I've had it happen to me plenty of times where you're just going to automatically lose that game because you're down a man. That's just the way it is. So with this particular addition to the game, now you can type /surrender to bring up a surrender vote. Now you'll be able to type /remake, and everyone can vote to do a remake. And I'm assuming it's probably just your team that gets to vote on that, because otherwise, it would be 4 votes against 5. But then I guess the game will go back to the champion select section, and then a new 5th player for that team will be found. It'll be the same other players, but then a new player will pop in, and it will keep you from losing those unwinnable games, which I think is a really cool feature and something that helps. Helps with toxicity and bullshit.
Well, they could also just make this mechanic where, like, you can get someone to jump into your game from the queue, and they get extra benefits for jumping into a game that is missing a person. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't want that.
Why not?
Because there's another MOBA I play, Awesome Knots, and they have that where it's drop in, drop out. So if someone rage quits and you get a bot that will replace them, and then that bot is useless basically, and then it will, as people are joining the queue, it will do the same thing. It'll plug someone right into that game, and what it'll do is it'll compensate by giving them a certain amount of money or whatever and levels, so that they come in and they're not like level 1. They come in, they're whatever the average is of your team or whatever. So they come in, they have enough money to buy stuff, and they're fine. They're pretty much equal, and that's great, except for I absolutely would hate it when my team was dominating their team and somebody rage quits because they're losing. and then someone else would come in who's a very, very good player and would turn the game around. And that's not fair. Like, I earned that win. I was destroying that team, and now somebody else comes in, they're a better player, and they just somehow turn it around. I've seen that happen, and it's frustrating. So I like the idea of remakes better.
Another large controversy that happened this week was with a Hearthstone tournament, and Blizzard actually officially running it through Twitch. There was a few people, competitors and that kind of stuff, but this one African-American guy was playing as well. And unfortunately, the Twitch chat just ended up this giant mess of racism, attacking this person for his race, making all these racist jokes over and over again. So much so that the moderators of that channel couldn't squash it all because it was just so much and so quick. You know how Twitch chat can get sometimes. Like,
I watch plenty of professional esports on Twitch, and every single one has some sort of crap. I usually just turn the chat off and just watch the thing, because reading the shit that comes out of people's mouths is just like, no thanks. So this is like nothing new, but apparently this one was there was more of a spotlight put on it.
Yeah. Well, it was because it was an official Blizzard event. It was on their channel and everything, you know what I mean? And Blizzard have come out and said, like, actually approached Twitch, you know, asking what the hell is going on here kind of thing. Like, what are you going to do to change this in the future? Because they were completely against this. They don't want, well, you know, they're kind of this family-orientated publisher. A lot of their games are around that medium, you know, fun, friendly, accessible, that kind of stuff. And having an official stream have this much vitriol on it, it looks bad on them. And they knew it looked bad on them, so they actually approached Twitch to go, you know, what the hell are you going to do about this? And it became this big drama and that kind of stuff. And Twitch ended up coming back saying, you know, they're actually going to bring in a few more features about how to ban people and cleaning up their chat a little bit.
It just took a big publisher. Well, that doesn't make sense, though, because, I mean, you would think that because every
no
stream
offense,
that I
but
watch,
Riot really don't give a shit. I know they care a little bit, but they know that's their community. But whereas Blizzard, that's not what they want to be known as. That's not what they want to be represented as.
Sorry,
a little bit, but that's in an official Twitch stream. You don't want that stuff happening, and I would fully guess that they would say they would be moving elsewhere. They would have told Twitch they would move their games elsewhere if they weren't going to change this. Like, they actually have the ability to ban Twitch from streaming their games.
Yeah.
They actually give Twitch, you know, the ability to have people, like, you know, streaming their Hearthstone games. And, like, Hearthstone is so popular on Twitch. Like, it's got hundreds of thousands of games being played on there sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, that would be a huge loss to them not being able to actually stream Hearthstone, having it a banned game on their service.
Yeah.
So they're trying to work with Blizzard, I guess, now.
Well, I mean, that's cool. It's great to have more features added to a streaming service like that, and basically the biggest one there is. So,
yeah.
I mean, YouTube is competing, and they do have a chat also when you watch their stream, so it's essentially the same thing, but they have, I'd say they're a close second. So, yeah, I mean, Twitch is obviously going to do what they have to do to please the big publishers, but I just don't see where this is a new thing. This has been happening for years.
Oh, it has been happening for years, but I don't think they've had as large an ultimatum as Blizzard coming against them.
I would argue that Riot would be worse, but okay.
I don't know.
Anyhow, it is good to see them making some sort of forward strides, and
definitely.
It's good that Blizzard has his eye open to what their real population is.
Yep.
You know, because they may have been blind to that, but I'm sure that anyone who's played a Blizzard game has known that exists one way or the other, just like
definitely.
in any other game. You know, it's the internet.
I hate that excuse, though. It's the internet. No, fuck that. Pick up your act, internet. This is not acceptable.
I'm not saying that it's acceptable. I'm just saying that it is the norm. So it shouldn't be surprising. It should be just dealt with, you know? People make these big deals like, oh, this happened at a Hearthstone thing. It's a big deal. Well, it happens at everything. It is a big deal, but it's not just because it was for Blizzard.
They haven't been dealing with it so far, though. They've just been excusing it off as the internet and not worrying about it. But we need to make actual actions against it and create mechanics that can better, manage these processes. And that's what they're doing with Twitch, I think, at the moment, a little bit. But it's like with, Twitter and how bad it can be sometimes, And they could easily fix a lot of the problems, but they just don't.
I don't think it's easy. I think that's kind of an understatement.
I'm not saying it's easy.
I mean, how do you corral millions upon millions of people into the same way of, behaving?
Well, one of the easy ones that Twitch have seemed to do is, if you're a new account, you don't get to use chat for a couple of months.
Yeah.
If your account's banned, obviously you can make a new account, but sorry, you're not going to be able to actually chat for a long time. That cuts a lot of that bad stuff out, you know what I mean? Because you can't just keep making new accounts and keep trolling certain people over and over again.
Right.
And they've also got, you can, IP ban people. They don't often, but it's a process you can do. And yes, you can get around those IP bans, but then for the general rabble, it's going to be an effort they're probably not going to bother with, just to troll someone on Twitch, I
don't know. Even if I was watching that tournament, I wouldn't have seen it because I just closed the chat.
Oh, so do I, actually.
It's not even worth watching. I mean, you don't see anything, well thought out or anything. It scrolls by way too fast for it to even be readable and to have a conversation. So I don't even know why chat's there, really. I mean, the only reason it was there, for small streams, like somebody who's individually streaming their game, it's there so that they can communicate with their audience. That's great. But when the audience is hundreds of thousands to millions of people, it's impossible to moderate that. It just is, unless they have some sort of filtering system that filters out any sort of racism or, cursing, any of that stuff. If they had some sort of algorithm or whatever that can find those things and automatically bleep them out, then great. Then that gets rid of it. But outside of that, what else can you really do? Because, people will just find ways around it.
Yeah, you can, but they're just making no effort at all at the moment to actually curb that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't just be oblivious and ignorant to it as a person that's actually running those services.
No, but I think that the solutions are harder to implement than...
Oh, they're most definitely hard to implement. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be implementing them.
Well, it doesn't mean
Twitch is a huge business now. They can afford to actually start looking at these problems and trying to manage them.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I think the last story that we have is a little bit of hardware news. NVIDIA announced their new line of graphics cards that's going to be coming out, the 1080.
That beats everything easily and is like half the price of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be better than the Titans, which came out a few years ago, and better than anything else that's out, the 980s, the 980 Ti, all of that.
Well, I think they've actually shown that it actually beats two 980s in SLI.
Yeah, something like that.
That's insane. I have a 980. That makes me sad. I only bought it a year ago.
Well, it's
fucking $800.
That's the norm. It always flip-flops.
Yeah.
But yeah, these ones are supposed to be a lot more cost-effective out the gate. And we'll have to wait and see because as of right now, they're just the ones that have been demonstrated are just the NVIDIA-made ones. Soon enough, the aftermarket companies will get a hold of it, and there'll probably be some cheaper options and some more expensive options depending on, features and whatnot. But yeah, I was thinking kind of recently because I have a 770, and I was starting to think about maybe getting a 980. And then I was thinking, okay, well, now that they announced the 1080s, maybe the 980s will be cheap within a couple months after those come out. But then it's basically half the processing power. So it's do I really want to bother? Or should I just wait for the 1080s to be cheap or cheaper? Or, take out a second mortgage and get one anyway.
But they're already really cheap. They're saying it's going to be like $300-$400.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's Aussie bucks.
I can't see spending more than that on a graphics card. I would not spend $800 on a graphics card. Sorry, wouldn't do it. If the graphics card alone costs more than a console, that's horrible. Because all it does is just a graphics card. It does a lot. I'm not saying that it doesn't.
The pretties.
At this point, the only reason you would need one of those is if you're trying to run 2 or 4K.
No, I need a better CPU for that.
Yeah, that too. It's actually, you'll probably need a better CPU to be able to do most of what the 1080 can do. But
true.
Still, interesting times. We've
Yeah.
seen some new, better stuff that's less money. That's
Well, this is probably the card they were developing for VR, I would say.
probably. That's it for the headlines today. We got one last thing for you, and that's idiots on the internet. And I didn't have anything really super controversial or overly funny, but I did come across this one article that was talking about a Steam Greenlight game. For those of you who don't know, Steam Greenlight is sort of way that indie developers or solo developers, like one-man teams or two-man teams, can get their game onto Steam. Basically, they just submit their game and the design and the concepts and all that good stuff. They submit it to that portion of Steam, and then anybody who has Steam can get on the Greenlight page, can look at the things that people are proposing and say, yeah, I want that on Steam, so vote yes for it. And if a game gets enough votes to be put on Steam, then it does get put on Steam, and then those developers now can have a way to make more money outside of just promoting their game by themselves. So it's a great little program. I think it's cool. A lot of the stuff that gets put on there is utter garbage, and I voted no for a lot of different things, but there have been some games that I've seen pop up on there that I ended up voting yes for and eventually did see on the store and eventually bought, and that's kind of cool. I like the program. It's a good thing. But there's one game that's on there that I don't think it's actually made it to Steam just yet, but it is on Greenlight, and it's called Steam Summer Sale, the game. And it's literally a game made to simulate the Steam Summer Sale. So it's got the front store page that looks like it does when the store page is during the summer sale. So it looks similar to that. It has a lot of different games with huge discounts and whatnot. And you buy them in the game. And apparently you can play them in the game. And then you can also, I don't know, just buy a bunch. It makes absolutely no sense when it comes down to it, because I mean the Steam Summer Sale is already ridiculous for most of us. Most people end up spending more money than they would like and end up with more games than they can play. I think we've all fallen into that trap a time or two.
I think it's more just how weird some of the summer sale mechanics have been lately.
Yeah, because they've made some
like
funny
the one where you had
games.
to play that game to earn cards, and it's just weird.
Yeah, or like the adventure one from a couple years ago when it was like a big board game, and depending on who did this or that with sales and buying stuff, like it gave your team more points. Yeah, I mean, there's just a bunch of stupid little things, but making a full-on video game out of that, I just don't see the point. And I don't understand how some of these people think that these are a good idea. I mean, because somebody's literally taking the time to program this. So they think it's a good idea. Yeah, but it's
obviously doing it as a piss take.
Yeah, I mean, it's a troll, but at the same time, a lot of those games that were like that, like, remember Goat Simulator? Like, that was a total, like, troll game. Like, somebody took the time to program that out, and it's a total troll, but it was actually really successful. And this is that same kind of thing, where it's just like, what the fuck?
There's another game out at the moment that's like, you can, like, manage the life of a YouTuber.
Yeah, I saw that too.
It's kind of funny.
There was another one where it was managing the life of a cam girl or cam guy or whatever. And I'm like, really? Like, really? That's just some weird shit that people think of to make into video games. And somehow these games make it to the Steam store page, and then people are actually buying them and playing them. Like, what was that one that Dune showed us that was Mount Your Friends or whatever? And then there was the other one where it was like you're actually literally having a sword fight with dicks. Like, the things that people come up with are ridiculous. But yeah, I wouldn't vote for this to be included in the Steam catalog, but I'm sure there's people out there that will. And the fact that I found this in an article on a major news site means that it's had some spotlight brought to it. And it's either going to be people like me that are looking at it and saying, what a bunch of fucking idiots, or it's going to be those other people that are like, oh, that's funny enough, I want to see that happen. And we may end up seeing this on the Steam Summer Sale. Like, one of the guys in the comments on this thing was like, yeah, I want to do like the most meta thing ever and buy this Steam Summer Sale, the game, during the Steam Summer Sale for a discount. Fucking ridiculous. It's so meta, bro. So meta. But that's all we got for you guys this week. We will be back in a week. I think next week is a Dune show, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, I think it's a tactics show. It's one of those. One of those guys will be here with us next week, and who knows what we'll be talking about. But we'll be there. Hopefully you guys will be too.
Hot potato, hot potato.
That does it for this week's edition of Couch Potatoes. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you'll continue to join us. Couch Potatoes can be found on Twitter at Couch Potatoes, and on Anook at anook.com/blog/couch-potatoes. Music credits, other places you can find us, and pertinent links discussed on the show can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening. We're going to get back to gaming now, so we'll see you next week.